Hi, I'm Josh Carter, and this is Flying for Life. As we unpack our next global goal, access to healthcare, we explore medevacs, MAF's medical evacuations service, which has saved thousands of lives all over the world. I'm joined by MAF pilot Ping Domtta, who's flown over 150 medevacs in Timor-Leste, where MAF operates the only air ambulance service in that country. Dr. Diana Zwijnenburg from Kompiam Hospital in Papua New Guinea, where MAF carries out around 500 medevacs a year. And Maud Kells, OBE, former missionary midwife and nurse, trainer, author and founder of the Mulita Hospital and Mulita Primary School in the Democratic Republic of Congo, where she was shot by bandits and medevaced by MAF, which saved her life. So, Ping, let's start with you. Great to welcome you onto the podcast today. Now, for the uninitiated amongst us, paint a bit of a picture for us of what it's like to live in Timor-Leste.
So if you look at the map of Timor-Leste, you will see that it's a small island country. The eastern part is Timor-Leste independent country, and the western part is still under Indonesia. And it's very interesting. You will see a tiny portion of Timor-Leste in the middle of Indonesia. So if you were to go by road, you will have to go through the immigration, the customs at the border. The other way is to go by sea on a boat over a night journey. If we fly there, it takes about 45 minutes for us. So we get a lot of medevac calls from that place. It's called Okusi. And we also support the communities there, and especially in the cases where there's death, and then the coffin has to be transferred to that community. If it's critical and they want to take it quickly, we are the only means, because a boat will take overnight. So I have done a couple of coffin flights there, and I believe that we play a vital role in that community.
How does that geography impact healthcare?
When it comes to medevac, that is very crucial, because you can't imagine bringing critical patients overnight on a boat. That geography makes it hard in terms of connectivity by road, because for us to fly to a place, it could take just a half an hour because we are flying straight away. But because of all this terrain, you can't have a road straight cutting from the one end to the other. So which makes the road a big winding. So even for a flight that takes only 30 minutes, it could take them 5 to 6 hours. So yes, in terms of medevac, it makes a huge difference with the geography. Yeah, and similar again, back at home, a short distance, which will take maybe an hour in a Western world, could take here about 3.5 hours, just triple the time. So yeah, because of the geography here, because of the terrain, it makes it hard. And also the weather, we have wet season and a dry season. And during the wet season, when it rains, the lands are not very stable. So there's a landslide happening here, and the roads are cut off. And during that time, it gets hard for people to connect from the district. So yes, that's when MAF comes into play, and then we are able to bring them, saving times and also saving those travels on the road.
Oh, thanks, Ping. You painted a great picture for us there. We will come back to you in just a few moments to find out more about MAF specifically in that country. But let's come to Maud now. Hi, Maud. How are you?
I am very well, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you for joining us. Now, until just last year, you've lived and worked in Mulita in Northeast Democratic Republic of Congo since 1968, Maud. I mean, that's quite a long time.
Yes, I first went out by boat. In those days, we didn't fly to the mission field. We went by boat. So it took 2 weeks from Belgium, Antwerp in Belgium, to go to Matadi, the port of on the west coast of Congo.
So tell us a little bit about that country. Paint a picture for us, for those of us who haven't been there.
There's a large part of it, forest, tropical forest. I live in the tropical forest area, and the province of Maniema So it's a very remote area. And the geography of it is that it's extremely difficult to get to because there's very poor infrastructure. The roads are very bad, and there are huge, big rivers to cross as well, and really impossible to get there except by MAF plane. That's why you have to have an airstrip there. Communication is extremely difficult. We have got a radio transmitter, but only mobile phones are 30 miles away to the nearest town at a place called Punya. And when I was out there, I had a satellite phone, but it's too expensive to leave there. So unfortunately, I had to bring it back home with me.
Maud, you said the roads are bad. How would you describe that for us? Because, here in the UK, we might say a road is bad if it's got a few little dips in it, and you've got a few bumps and you worry about your tyre. But what do you mean there?
Because we have mostly rainy season, they're huge and the big potholes. And on the main roads where there are lorries bringing supplies into the town off our little road, this huge big potholes. And some of those potholes they're not potholes at all. They're car holes or lorry holes, because when a vehicle goes down into them, you can only see the roof of them until they get back out again. So it's extremely difficult to travel by road. And some of the roads, the bridges are out. Sometimes there's only one or two logs and no way a vehicle could cross over them. So extremely difficult to travel by road.
So where you were in Mulita, how did that affect the healthcare?
Patients come usually by foot or by bicycle or motor bicycle. Very rarely do we see a vehicle on our road because the road is so terrible. And that's why we have to have an airstrip and MAF coming in. I always go in by plane and go out by plane and get my supplies via plane.
Thanks, Maud, for that. We'll come back to you in a moment and find out how you ended up in that country and part of your story, which is really, really amazing. But I want to bring in Dr. Diana now. Hi, Diana. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Josh.
Great to have you on board. So, as I've asked the other two, could you paint a bit of a picture about where you are in Kompiam?
Kompiam is a village in or a part of a province in Papua New Guinea. And I guess if you've already heard Ping's story, it's almost like a big Timor-Leste, really. So it's very a very rugged country. It's got like a big mountain range in the middle. And then going out to the north and the south side, it's pretty much marsh area. Then the Port Moresby, the main capital city, is actually, there's no road from that. Not really any road to the next biggest city, which is Lae, and then the third biggest city, Mount Hagen, which is closest to us. So because of the remoteness and the geography, the roads also are very difficult to go. It's the same picture as Maud picture. So roads really are more like riverbeds, depending on the season, but there's big potholes. You might be able to just get up to 30 k's an hour, 40 k's an hour if you are lucky. Kompiam is 2 hours out of Walbeck, which is about total hour 5 hours drive out of Mount Hagen. And if you would fly that, it will only take 20 minutes. So as the crow flies, it's not that far, but because the road is so bad, that's what makes it so remote.
Diana, can you explain, what healthcare is like in that part of the world compared to somewhere in the West, like where you're from in Holland? What are the main differences?
Yeah, so in PNG, there's the latest sort of figures is there are only about 500 doctors, and for a population of about 9 million people. And of these 500, it's something like 90% of these doctors work in Port Moresby, and the other 10% work in the rest of PNG. So there's a lot of people in the rural areas, and there's only very few doctors. Patients are so much sicker when they arrive, because before someone will actually, it's the same as Maud says, and people have to come by foot. If they have to come, unless there is plane just going that way, but a lot of people don't have the money for that. So they come by foot. In order for them to come, they have to obviously make the decision to travel. So usually they wait some time and see if someone's really sick enough. So by the time then they have to do 2 or 3 days walk. And then if they come, they're really, really sick. So there's also a lot less health literacy. So the knowledge about what is needs to be seen urgently and not is not as well known. So that means that a lot of people die on the way when they come here. If someone does arrive in our hospital, we do have a language barrier is a big thing because we do not speak the local language. We speak Tok Pisin, which is the PNG language, but we don't actually speak the Engan language, which is spoken here, which makes it really hard to get a proper history and timeline because time is not something that plays in people's minds. People live day by day. And for example, if you ask the question, oh, well, how long have you had this? Then you might just get an answer like 5 years. And it just means that they had it 5 years ago and then it's just now come back again. So the timeline is really hard to ascertain and it took me a while to get there. Then there's also not many investigation possibilities. So we only have an X-ray and an ultrasound and a few lab tests. And on top of that, we only have a handful of treatment options. So that means that a lot of diseases we cannot never fully diagnose, or some of them we cannot treat. Most cancers we cannot treat unless we can offer surgery. I certainly found that the level of knowledge among the nursing staff was very low, and it means that a lot had to be re-educated. So we do a lot of training here, or mainly me, I do a lot of training just to help bring that level up so that we actually as doctors get notified when someone deteriorates and not just get notified the next day that someone has died.
Thanks, Diana. Wow, really, really interesting. Ping, if I can bring you back in, you're an MAF pilot. So explain MAF setup in Timor-Leste and how does it impact the healthcare of the population there?
So MAF started in Timor-Leste in 2007. And right at the moment, we have 2 planes. It's Australian registered. And we have 9 staffs in total, 3 international and 6 Timorese staff. And so MAF in Timor-Leste works in partnership with the Ministry of Health, and we have an MOU signed with them to provide 365 days of medical evacuation. So let it be any important festivals here, public holidays, there's always a pilot and a staff available for a medevac. MAF provides the aircraft to connect to the remote districts, and it is the Ministry of Health who provides the team. So on each flight, there will be a nurse or a doctor accompanying the flights to take care of the patients. We connect them with our aircraft, we take them and we bring them here.
So talk us through the process of a medevac.
You go to the district community health center. So there are health centers set up in most of the districts. If it's a non-urgent, they will organize an ambulance by road. But if it's an urgent case that has to be evacuated, which is time critical, then they will send the referral to the team here in Dili, which is the capital city of Timor-Leste. And then the doctors here in Dili will call us and we will say, all right, we are waiting for the nurse. So it takes about 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on the availability of nurses. So when they arrives here, we check them in, board them on plane. And as we depart, our operation staffs, our ground staffs inform the ambulance team that the aircraft is departed. It will get there in 30 minutes or say 40 minutes. So by the time we get over the airstrips, we will see that the ambulance is ready, waiting for us. So we land there, and then the nurse, the doctors, they will do some quick follow-up, see if the patients need some more care or more checkups. And after that, we will help them loading to the plane. And then, yes, as we depart from the district, our ground staff will call the ambulance team again saying the aircraft has departed. It will arrive in Dili in about 30 minutes. So they will organize the ambulance. And by the time we land in Dili, they will send an ambulance. We will shift them from the aircraft to the hospital ambulance, and they will be taken to the main hospital in Dili where they will get a better treatment.
Am I right in saying, Ping, that there's only one main hospital? You mentioned the medical centers in each district. Are they hospitals?
No, they are, we would say, a community health center. They are not a proper hospital. It's more like for the basic care or the first care they can receive there. So this is the only hospital in Timor. That's this hospital in Dili. It's called HNGV, and that's where all the patients are shifted from the districts to get a better treatment.
Wow. And what's the population of Timor-Leste with one hospital?
Timor-Leste, it's 1.3 million, and in just within the city in Dili, it's about 150,000.
Wow. And one hospital for all those people.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, that is amazing, really, when you think about it. I mean, here in the UK, we have a moan about the NHS occasionally, but at least there's a hospital very close by to most people. Ping, can you tell us how many medevacs do you do on average, maybe in a week there in Timor-Leste?
In a year, we do about 250, and if we talk about the weeks, there could be a day the aircraft is ready, the pilot is ready, and there's no call for the next 2 to 3 days. And there could be another day where there's 3 calls on the same day to do the medevac. So yeah, it just varies, and it's unpredictable here.
And how do you prioritize, who needs to go on a medevac? Because you could be busy doing something else, but how do you decide to drop everything and take someone to hospital?
So when we have 2 aircrafts, if we get any other charter requests, we always keep 1 aircraft for medevac. So we will never send 2 aircrafts out for charters. There will always be an aircraft available. And if there's a booking request from other NGOs or from other mission organizations, we make very clear that if there's a medevac, then we will prioritize. People are very understanding here. They don't get mad even if they are delayed by a few hours. And they understand that, yes, medical takes priority over their flight. So yeah, we make it very clear when we book them on a flight.
Tell me a bit about some of the less glamorous things about flying for MAF, because it sounds very exciting, of course, flying an aeroplane around everywhere. But I believe sometimes you have to clear up bodily fluids from the plane. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. So if you see an airliner pilots, they walked in with a nice suit, tie, but it's very different here. And I'm involved myself in loadings and washing my own planes and a lot of other things. And I remember a flight where I flew a passengers. It was a short flight, so I didn't fly that high, and it was a little bumpy that day. And when we do our briefing, we tell them that there's a sick bag just in case they need it. And the moment I touched down, she started saying, I'm sorry. And I didn't know why, but then I realized I could smell it. And then we parked the aircraft, and her driver was there to pick her up. And sadly, that day, I didn't even have any rags to clean up. So I asked the driver, hey, do you have any rags that I can use to clean up? So he gave me the rags, the passenger left, and I had other passengers to pick up from the next destination. So I just used a water bottle, and I was cleaning up the vomit and make sure the aircraft was cleaning again to pick my other patients. So yes, we do all that kind of jobs.
Wow, yeah, the other side of being an MAF pilot. Thanks for that story, Ping. Thanks for painting that picture for us. Maud, can we come back to you now?
Go ahead. Yes.
Love to hear, how did you end up in the Democratic Republic of Congo? What's the story? And you ended up being there for 54 years, so you must have enjoyed yourself.
When I finished my nursing training and I prayed that God would guide me into the career of his choice, I read C.T. Studd, the founder of the WAC mission, and he started the work in Congo. He started the mission, he started the church, and I was really excited and thrilled by reading his life story, and thought I would love to work there. And then there was a memorial service for missionaries who had been martyred in the 1964 rebellion, and an appeal made for young people who would be willing to go out to replace those who'd been martyred in 1964. And I offered to go out as one of those replacement missionaries. By that time, it was 1968. And that's when I first went out to the mission field.
Wow, Maud, so let me just clarify what you just said. You heard that people had been killed in that country and they needed replacement people to go out and talk about Jesus. And that's when you stepped up and did it.
Yes, that's correct.
Were you scared to go out there?
I was a mixture of scared and excitement.
And how many people went out with you? Did you go out with a group?
I went out with 2 other nurses. One went to a different missionary society, with a different missionary society, which was working in a different part of Congo. Democratic Republic of Congo is a massive country about the size of Western Europe. And the other girl only stayed a short time. She really found it too difficult to live out there. So I was the only one who stayed.
So, Maud, how soon after you arrived in Congo did you first encounter MAF there?
I suppose it was 1980. Nainkundi is quite near to the Uganda border, really in the northeast of Congo. And that's where I first encountered MAF. And then I worked at a place called Nebabongo for the next 5 years. And we used to do surgical safaris from there using MAF again to really remote areas in the forest where people were dying of strangulated hernias and things like that. And we would go in and just do the very, very basic things, but saved lives.
Thanks for the picture you've painted for us there. We'll come back to your story because it does get quite adventurous, to say the least. But Diana, let's come back to you in the Kompiam in Papua New Guinea. Tell us a little bit about what you are involved with there day to day and how MAF plays a part into that as well.
Because Kompiam is quite far away out of any sort of city, we pretty much at the center of our little health centers around. So we do have a hospital which has currently got 60 beds, that we're trying to expand that to probably about 125 beds. We're working with 2 doctors and the nurses, and we currently have one RMO, which is a junior doctor, but sometimes we have none. In the morning, we will do ward round, check whoever is admitted. In the afternoons, we'll usually do doctor's clinic. And then there's a lot of, then there's procedures. We have 2 days a week where we would do procedures, and they will vary from appendicitis to hernias to, we see a lot of trauma, unfortunately, a lot of bush knife wounds, a lot of domestic violence wounds, which we try to fix. We don't really have any other hospital to send it to. So unless we can send people beyond our hospital to Mount Hagen or to Port Moresby, then they'll go. But most people have not got money to either go there and neither stay there. So that means if we don't perform these procedures, then nobody will really help them.
And Diana, we've heard from Ping just a moment ago explaining to us about how a medevac works. You're kind of at the receiving end of that, waiting for people to come and get off the plane. So how does that work? And how often do you receive an MAF medevac into the hospital?
So we do get quite a lot of tribal fights. And if there's been a tribal fight, we do see suddenly a surge of medevacs, often shot wounds and gunshot wounds and knife wounds. And but yeah, I think maybe on average, maybe 2 or 3 a month or so that we will get sent to us. So, and then usually what happens is the community health worker in the closer area gets contacted and contacts us and discusses the case with us, and then we as doctors decide whether this is a medevac or not. And if that is, then we have a special WhatsApp communication with MAF, and we'll inform them of what we like, and then they try to send a plane out as quickly as they can.
Last year, you treated an MAF medevac patient where his house fell on his head. What happened? And first of all, just set up the whole scene for us, because how can your house fall on your head? I don't really understand.
A lot of houses in our area are built on poles, so they're probably about 2 meters off the ground, maybe a bit less. And that's when, so they sleep off the ground. And then underneath is often a community area where they would sit at night together. And then in the house, they would sleep. They have a fireplace, which is a grate, which is laid onto heavy stones. And that's where the fire is being contained and cooked on. And then they have some side rooms usually around that. So this man was actually building this house. So in that process, he was working underneath that house. So the house was already erected on the stones, and he had the floor already done and even parts of the roof. And then while he was busy underneath that, the whole thing collapsed, and there's pretty much the floor, including those heavy stones from the fireplace, fell on top of his chest and his whole body. Yeah.
Wow. And what injuries did he sustain?
Well, the most obvious was that he had a broken leg, broken femur, this upper leg, and a less obvious one that the big stones onto his chest. That at that moment it wasn't that clear. He was a bit dazed, but also the health worker had given him morphine because he was in a lot of pain when he was pulled out from underneath the rubble. And pretty much everyone there thought he was going to die, because after the morphine, he pretty much sort of lay there lazily and didn't say very much. And that's how we received him.
And so what was your role in that?
Well, I was the only doctor at the hospital at that stage. So we got him off the plane onto a particular board and carried him into the ambulance, which was waiting at the airstrip. Then we drove him up to the hospital, which is about a 2-minute drive. And then got him, I examined him. So I do have an ultrasound, checked for any internal injuries, checked his leg, took him to the theatre, put a pin in his lower leg to get his leg in traction. Gave him some fluids, gave him some pain relief, some oxygen, and then we just and then waited to see how he would recover. And he then did quite well in the subsequent hours. So he woke up from his morphine and he sort of knew where he was, and he could remember that what actually had happened. And so when we then heard the story is that he had this big chest trauma. And at that stage, we didn't have an X-ray because the X-ray machine was broken. So we couldn't do any chest X-rays or check that bit. But it didn't seem that he had broken ribs, but I was just waiting, and I thought, well, he has got a high chance of getting further chest injury, like a bruised lung, which is not something that is immediately visible. And sure enough, in the next sort of day, he became way more short of breath, and he was unable to breathe properly. And then there was the choice in either just leaving things as they are, meaning he would die, or to actually intubate him, ventilate him, and let his lung recover over a week or so before and seeing if he would survive, which he did.
Good. It's got a good news ending. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. What would have happened to him? I mean, if he hadn't been medevacs to you, would he have been able to get to a hospital somehow?
Well, we're the only one in the area, so he would have died. There's no doubt about that.
And is death from that kind of accident quite common there?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, thanks, Diana. It's very, very sobering thought for us there. Ping, can we just come back to you now? I'd love to hear a story from you, about how you have, literally saved somebody in a medevac. Tell us a great story.
I keep track of my medevac, and I just completed 151 medevacs since I came to Timor.
Wow.
There's this one medevac. On the 5th of April last year, I flew a 6-year-old boy from Ataru Island. For people awareness, or to let them know where this island is, it's about 15 minutes flight, and I can literally see it from my office. I can see the island. It's just across our office. But on a boat, it can take between 1 hour to 3 hours, depending on which boat. And also, if the sea gets rough, the connection is totally disconnected. The people are disconnected to the mainland. I flew this 6-year-old boy. He had a dengue fever.
Can you just explain what that is for us?
It's not malaria, but it's caused by mosquito bite. And when it gets bad, you can get severe fever. And then I've heard from people too, you can start bleeding. So it can be really bad to you. At midnight on the 4th, that little boy, Bendito, his mother checked his condition, and she was shocked and panicked because he was bleeding from his nose. So immediately they took him to the clinic, the district health, the community health center, and then they did a checkup, and the doctors said, he was diagnosed with dengue fever, and his conditions was very severe, and he needed to be transferred to Dili, which is the capital city, to bring him to the main hospital. And it was midnight, so there was no means of transport for him. And in Dili, we don't fly at night. We don't have the airport lighting, so we are limited only to day operations. Even if it's a very critical medical cases, we have to wait for the daylight. So they had to wait for the night. They were in the district clinic, and the next morning, the ambulance team approached us. We went there, and then again, this is the testimony from the mother that she was really sad that all these things were going on, but when she saw the MAF plane landing, there was a hope that her son was going to get a better treatment. We found out that this was his third time flying with MAF, the little boy. So the first time he had a severe abdominal pain, and then MAF brought him to Delhi, saved his life. So he went back. And then the second time he had a stomach problem again. And then we transferred him to Delhi, to the main hospital. And then he went back. And then this third time he had a dengue fever. He was discharged from the hospital. And then
how old was the boy? And do you think he would have died from the dengue fever? Can that kill you?
Oh yes, that can kill you. If you don't get proper medical care, that can kill you. And he was just 6 years old.
Oh, wow. 6 years old. And he'd already been flown 3 times by the age of 6 by MAF. I mean, what an amazing story that is. And like you said, I mean, just bringing so much hope to that community. Thanks, Ping. Now, you could say that boy was an MAF frequent flyer, perhaps, but not as frequent as Maud, who we've got here with us. How many times, Maud, do you reckon you've been in an MAF aircraft?
Difficult to tell, but at least 70 times.
Oh, wow.
After the war in the Congo at the turn of the century, after I went back, I used to just go out for 6 months at a time and then back home again. And I've been out every year since the year 2000, twice every year. And then also in between, I've had supplies brought in, medical supplies.
So, Maud, you mentioned there that you've been on an MAF plane 70 times plus probably, but there was one particular time that I want you to tell us about, a time when literally MAF saved your life. So tell us that story. Go from the beginning.
So this one particular night, about midnight, there was a rap on my window. I don't have glass in my bedroom windows in my house in Congo. I only have shutters. So there was a rap on my shutters from the midwife to tell me there was a woman in difficulties in the maternity. Now, normally the midwives I trained, they always did the ordinary deliveries, no problem. But if there was a complication, they always called me. She had had 3 previous cesarean sections, so obviously was needing another cesarean section. She was in strong labor. And I inquired about the mother and about the baby, the fetus, and everything was normal. And I said, will you go ahead? And if you have any problems, come back and call me. And so she went off and I settled down to sleep again. About 15 minutes later, there was another rap on my shutters. And this time a male voice said to me, Mademoiselle, you're needed in the maternity urgently. And I tried to reassure him that I'd sorted out the problem in the maternity. But he was very, very insistent. And so I thought he must be the husband of the patient. So I said, okay, I'll go to the hospital. And I got out through the back door. My night guard was there and he said, Mademoiselle, do you have to go to the hospital? I said, yes. So he said, well, I'm coming with you. So we went off to the hospital. It was only about maybe 200 or 300 yards away. And we met a group of people just between the maternity and the operating theatre, and I asked them what the problem was, and they looked at me as though I was growing horns and didn't reply. So eventually, after asking 3 times, they said, Mademoiselle, we didn't call you, there's no problem. And I said, well, where's the husband of the patient? And they said, well, we think he's down in the operating theatre. And I said, okay, that means, and everything's okay, the patient's okay, yes, everybody's okay. I said, okay, to the night guard, we'll go back to the house. So we went back to the house, and as we were walking around the side of the house to go to the back door again, suddenly these 2 bandits came running round, both wearing masks and camouflage clothing. One of them grabbed my night guard and went off with him, and the other one pointed a gun at me. Well, I immediately froze and I wasn't even able to speak or do anything for a minute or 2. And then I thought, he's not getting the better of me. So I went out, I put out my hand to grab the gun, and he pulled the trigger, and he actually shot twice, 2 bullets through my, just below my shoulder on my right-hand side. And the bullets came out the back, as I discovered later, through fractured 2 ribs and partially destroyed 2 vertebrae. Amazingly, didn't sever my spinal cord. So I just yelled, and the bandit ran off. And then I could feel the blood trickling down my back. So I pressed my back firmly against the wall to try to reduce the bleeding. And I called for help. I kept shouting for help. No one came because everyone heard the gunfire and they heard me shouting, and they were all terrified to come out of their houses. And that was a very long 7 to 10 minutes. I really don't know how long it was, but it seemed like a lifetime. And it flashed through my mind, is this how the Lord Jesus felt when he was on the cross? Everyone abandoned him. And no matter how many names, I shouted all the names that I knew around who lived near me, but no one came. Eventually, the little night guard got free of the bandit who had taken him. And he came back to me and he said, Mademoiselle, I'll go and call the pastor and the various people. And within a few minutes, I could hear the drums. They have talking drums out there. And very soon there was a lot of people who appeared and helped me into the house, and I just collapsed on the floor there. And then the nurses came and tried to put up they put up a drip to give me some saline to replace a lot of fluid loss, because I'd lost a lot of blood by this stage. And then they contacted the chief in the area who came, and it was very, very difficult to get communication out, because I had a satellite phone, but I was the only one who knew how to use it, and I was in no state to use it. So they had to really cycle or go on a motorbike 30 miles to get to the nearest phone to contact MAF and also the leaders of our church to let them know what happened. So it was actually almost 12 hours before MAF was able to come, because there was bad weather at Nyankunde, and there was a German doctor and his wife. When they heard it, they said they would like to come to help. And they got blood. They found out my blood group, and they brought blood from one of the German missionaries. Sent down blood, and by the time they arrived, it was nearly midday, and I was unconscious at that stage. And apparently they worked on me for about an hour and gave me blood, and I began, and until I was stable enough to travel on the plane. And then they evacuated me to Nyankunde, which is really, there's a hospital there. It's also a MAF base, and it's up near the Uganda border. It's about a 2-hour flight from Mulita. And by the time I arrived there, I just remember beginning to waken up as we were landing on the airstrip at Nyankunde, and then they transported me to the hospital. But I was just so grateful to be still alive. I really did think that the Lord was taking me to glory then.
Wow, Maud, what a story that is. I mean, it's just unbelievable. What do you think would have happened to you had you not been able to be medevaced by MAF to that hospital? Do you think you would have died?
Oh, definitely would have died, because I'd lost so much blood, and I really didn't want to get local blood, because there's so many patients have HIV positive and hepatitis and all sorts of infectious diseases. I really didn't want to get local blood, and I really needed a blood transfusion to survive. And that was the MAF brought the German missionaries' blood to me, and that's what saved my life.
Wow, that's scary thought. Really is miraculous that it didn't hit your spinal cord. So you say it was a 2-hour flight to the hospital. I mean, that's it's quite a long time. But how long would it have actually taken you to get there without the flight, had you been able to stay alive for that long?
At least a week or 10 days.
So you definitely would have died. I see what you mean. Yeah, there's no way that would have been possible. What a horrific experience. Now, Maud, what's probably more amazing than what we've heard is that you went back again to that country. I mean, for most people, that probably would have been it. Call a day on it, and even say to God, okay, I've done my bit. That's fine. Now I'll just live a nice Western life again. But no, you went back. Why? Why did you do that?
Because I wanted to finish the project. We had built a little hospital, and we'd built a primary school, a 7-classroom primary school, because there were a lot of children there, and they had no school to go to. So we built a primary school. But then the little siblings of the primary school children wanted to go to school as well. So I was building a nursery for them, and I just got the foundations in, and I really wanted to finish that nursery for the children at Mulita. And And also I knew that they would need a lot of medicines. So I ordered a lot of medical supplies from Uganda and chartered the plane, MAF plane, to bring them into Mulita.
Did they ever catch the perpetrators of that?
Yes, the chief sent the people out when it happened, and they got one of the bandits. The other one hid in the forest along the side of the airstrip for 2 days, and then he was arrested as well. They were both thrown into prison. Since it happened, I've heard that one of them has died. The one actually who shot the bullets at me.
Wow. And were you able to forgive them for what they did?
I just put myself in the place of the Lord Jesus, and he said, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. And the Lord Jesus, he forgave them when he died on the cross for us. And I'm the follower of Jesus, and I just wanted to follow his teaching, and that was to forgive.
Wow. Wow, very inspirational and challenging as well, Maud, for all of us listening to that amazing story. And that's all we have time for this episode. My big thanks to Ping Domtta, Maud Kells, OBE, and Dr. Diana Zwijnenburg for that fascinating insight into the world of medevacs. If you want to find out more about how MAF supports global healthcare or how you can live more sustainably in God's world, why not check out MAF's new 6-part Bible study series, He Saw It Was Good. Just go to maf-uk.org/good. You've been listening to me, Josh Carter, and Flying for Life, MAF UK's new podcast. Until next time, bye for now.